Well, it's finally here. Our first MCU film in like a year and a half since Spider-Man Far From Home came out. The film has been delayed like a billion times. Black Widow is finally out. So, what I think about it, let's talk about it.
To me, you were everything.
Bring her home.
Put your seatbelts on. She's such a mom.
So Black Widow is basically what I thought it was gonna be via the trailers. A pretty fun, but overall pretty forgettable MCU film. Now, that doesn't mean it's bad per se. In fact, I would say it's competently made, fun characters, decent action sequences, and a fun enough time. It's not a movie that takes much to watch. It's a entertaining enough time. It's just a Black Widow movie should have been so much more. And we're going to talk about all that. But first, I want to talk about what I liked first. The casting and characters is really good. Scarlett Johansson is still great as his character. She's always been great, and she's great here. The rest of the cast is also really great. And also, a standout for me is David Harbour in the film. He was really fun, really entertaining, and just a really fun and standout character that I just really enjoyed. And the family dynamic that's in this film is really well done as well. There were some pretty sweet and touching moments in there. The action sequences are fine. They're decently shot, decently choreographed, but it's just basic ways to shoot action and get the coverage. Shot, wide shot, close up, wide shot. It's just very standard way to shoot action sequences. The humor is just standard MCU humor. Some of the jokes are pretty funny, but some of them start funny, but then overused. There's like 3 jokes about how Black Widow uses the same pose, and also like 4 jokes about a vest that start pretty funny, but then they're just overused to the point of just them not being that funny. And also, one of the biggest problems with this film is it should have been made like probably 5 years ago. It's just too late to make a Black Widow film right after the character dies. I know this is set in between Civil War and Infinity War, and it does a good enough job tying in some things at the end of the film, but it just should have been made a while ago because this film has no stakes. We know this character isn't going to die, and I'm not saying the film can't have stakes if you know what happens to a character that's been done before, and a film can still have stakes. It's just the film doesn't have anything. The film just kind of feels lifeless and just kind of hollow. And also, even though why some of the action is fine and it's well done and stuff, there's an over reliance on CGI surprisingly, and pretty obvious CGI people and just green screens. And while the visual effects are good, it just doesn't feel real. There's a car crash in the film that just multiple in the film that just don't feel real. I kind of compare this film to Captain America and the Winter Soldier in the way that film dealt with action. I kind of wish Black Widow would have adopted that style, not just be a carbon copy of Winter Soldier, but still having that grit. There's no grit to the film. The film is very glossy and clean and has this clean look to it, and nothing really feels real. And also, the tie-ins that they make just doesn't really work for me. I don't really know what it is. This film isn't anything super special, and also the villain in the film is just a complete waste of time. The villain is such a cool idea. The Taskmaster is a really awesome idea, but yet they don't do anything with the character, which is just not great. It just doesn't make any sense. It's such a cool and unique and clever idea, but they just completely waste it. They don't do much with the Taskmaster. He's just kind of there. This film has no surprises. The film tries to have twists and turns. They don't really work. I'm not saying they're predictable. They're not. They just don't really work. And the film does a good enough job wrapping itself in a nice fine bow. But to be honest, there's nothing much to talk about. This film is bland and very forgettable. It's not a bad movie. It's a film you can put on and enjoy. There's some decent action sequences, some good character moments, some funny bits. It's just what this film could have been. It's wasted potential. Also, the tone of this film is just completely inconsistent. You would have a very serious or heart to heart moment, but then it immediately cut to a joke. It's not completely just this film. The MCU does it a lot, but I didn't really notice it in those films because a lot of times those films were more interesting and engaging than this film. This film just isn't interesting. It's a fine watch. It's a not a bad way to spend 2.5 hours, but it's just not a very engaging film. And the post-credit scene, I'm not going to spoil it, was just not very exciting. It tries to set up something that just doesn't really work. This film is just alright, and which I can't really say I was disappointed because via the trailers I knew that this film wasn't going to be anything special, but a Black Widow film could be really great. It's just there wasn't. And also, lastly, there's some really cartoonish Russian accents in this film that just don't really work. And also, one more thing, this film doesn't really tell the origin of Black Widow. There's a beginning where we see her as a kid, and then this opening credit sequence, which I think is new for the MCU. They haven't done opening credits in like a long time, and then that's about it. We're done with the origin. We learn a bit more about her past, but that's about it. There's not enough for this film. There's so many interesting things that you could have done with this character. Make a film before she met the Avengers. That could have been really cool, but no, we just kind of get this glossy MCU formulaic film with some good moments in it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just I wanted so much more with this film, and the character is such an interesting character, and this is probably going to be the last time we'll see her because when this film ends, it perfectly syncs up with Infinity War. Then we're probably not going to get a film again, and I know we won't. So I think they kind of just wasted potential. I actually still think this might have been better as just a Disney Plus TV show instead of a film. But whatever, I'm done rambling. Black Widow is a fine film. It's okay. It's not the greatest way to start the Marvel Phase 4 in terms of the film lineup. But in my opinion, I didn't think by the trailers that this film was going to be all that great. And to be honest, it wasn't. I'll give Black Widow a B. It's B for basic. It's a pretty basic film. And in terms of the MCU scale, it's probably in the middle somewhat. It's a pretty formulaic, not very interesting film. So those are my thoughts on Black Widow. What do you think about it? Let us know all your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you next time.